Last Epoch, yeah! Cycle 1, yeah! Exciting, yeah! Let's go, what are you playing? I am playing a Warlock, finally.
Hey folks, this is Riker, and right now is the best time to try out Last Epoch, or revisit it. With Cycle
It's always a good time to play Last Epoch, let's be completely real.
1.1 starting today, we have the game's first major post-launch update, and there's a lot to be excited about. I've been covering Last Epoch since it was a Kickstarter project back in 2018. I always liked what
I've been loving Last Epoch since that point.
they were doing, I always liked their ideas. Last year, the devs invited me to their Gamescom booth to be an advocate for the game, and today we'll thank them for...
Dude, people that are Diablo 4 tier are gonna click on these things, and then they're gonna just die. Because at the early points of the game, it does take a long while to kill these, and they do deal a decent amount of damage. And there's a lot of skills that are constantly being used. No, seriously, when a mini boss like this uses like 5 different skills, that's a lot for the average player to comprehend. In Diablo terms, this would be a boss that has like 1 basic attack, and there you go. It's not even close.
For sponsoring this video about their big update. But even outside of the sponsorship, I made a video a couple months back about the 5 best ARPGs of all time, and Last Epoch made my top 5, which is especially noteworthy because this is the youngest game in my top 5, having just seen its full release in February of this.
To be honest, it's not really hard to make a top 5 list of these kind of games. Diablo 4 is even on my top 5 of these kind of games because there's not enough games that are actually even remotely good. What do we have? We have Path of Exile, Last Epoch, Diablo, and let's just call it Diablo, not Diablo 2, 4, 3, or well, 3 doesn't exist still, you know. And what do you have then? Torchlight 3 or 2 or whichever Torchlight it was, and after that I don't even know what games are left. There is one game, but I don't remember what it's called. Grim Dawn, I think, is a decent choice. Wolfen's Blood or whatever that garbage is called is complete trash, and you should never play that. Making a top 5 is not hard. That's all I'm trying to say here.
Year. Last Epoch has my favorite active skill system of any ARPG, with every skill getting its own skill tree. They found an ingenious solution to...
True, and at some point they're gonna even make the skill trees bigger.
A common ARPG problem by giving players the choice to join a faction that allows you to use an in-game trade house, or if you're not into trade, to instead join a faction that gives you more determinism over your loot drops and better...
Yeah. They literally fixed the problem no one knew is even a problem, fixable and improvable. This is what great games do. They improve on things no one even knows need improving.
Drop rates. And the game overall strikes a nice balance between accessibility and depth. It's easy to jump into, but it still gives you a bunch of meat to sink your teeth into as you dive deeper into the game. It's through and through an ARPG made by ARPG fans who understand the genre. And with the devs' commitment to ongoing support, the game will only keep getting better. When Last Epoch launched, the multiplayer servers were rough at first, but that's all been worked out now. As for criticisms about the game itself, the only major...
Man, the server issues was such a heavy blow to Last Epoch, to be honest.
...thing that I really saw were some issues with balance at the top end of play, and well, just kind of running out of things to do at the end game. You'd blast the game for a couple of weeks, and then you'd feel done. Like there was...
Okay, listen, telling me that you blast the game for a couple of weeks is already good. Game comes out, oh my god, it doesn't have so much stuff in it as Path of Exile, you know, the 10-year-old thing. No, it doesn't. but it has plenty. If a game like this comes out, and it legitimately has enough content for people to be engaged with it, when it launches literally for multiple weeks, that's already a huge win.
Wasn't really more to do. Well, all of that and more has been addressed with this update. Oh, and if you're still looking to pick up Last Epoch, it's currently on sale on Steam, 20% off until July 11th. But the new cycle, 1.1, again, begins today. Cycles are Last Epoch's version of seasons or leagues. So if you previously had a cycle character, it has now been moved to Legacy, along with everything in its stash.
That's right, where it gets promptly deleted.
When you make a new character now, you can either select Legacy, or you can create the character in the new cycle. A new cycle is a fresh start. It's like a brand new account. You got to do everything from scratch. But different in Last Epoch is that all the same content will be available on both cycle and legacy. None of the content is temporary. It's not just borrowed power. It's all coming to the base game. Both game modes are identical, so whether you want to jump into the new cycle with a fresh character, or you just want to keep playing your old legacy character, you'll have access to the same content. Now, if you're a trade-minded player, the cycle provides a fresh economy. And if you're a competitive player, there are separate leaderboards for cycle versus legacy, so you'll probably want to compete in the cycle. They've also added new ladders with this update to track who's going to be the first to reach level 100, as well as timestamps to show when different arena levels have been cleared.
Dude, imagine your game launches with this while Diablo 4 is constantly yapping and crying about, oh, it's hard to implement. We need to load everyone else's stash. Losers. Absolutely pathetic.
Said if you're short on time or you just want to try the new content as soon as possible, you can always just resume playing on your old character. But if you're new to Last Epoch, I'd suggest making a cycle character. There's really no downside to doing so, and most people are going to be playing cycle anyway. Now, that said, while all the content is available in Legacy, there's just one little caveat here, and that's the new Pinnacle Boss that they're adding. He's only going to be available in Legacy either 7 days from now or once any player has defeated the boss, whichever comes
Yeah, we know about this system. It makes sense. It's fine.
first. And the reason for this is simply because they didn't want to see the new Pinnacle Boss immediately deleted on day one by everyone's superpowered Legacy character.
Yeah, because this is why they did it. Exactly. There's gonna be legacy characters that just literally snap that finger and bam, boss is dead in 0.1 second.
Characters. They wanted there to be a sense of discovery and progression and excitement within the community to first see him as a true challenge and needing to gear up and learn his mechanics and become better before defeating him. But again, that content is still coming to Legacy, just...
By the way, the dodge mechanic is pretty smooth also, I just want to say, because what else are you going to say about the dodge mechanic that it has been added? And it's not one dodge, it's two dodges, which is so cool. I absolutely love it. Because Cycle 1 launched yesterday.
On a short delay.
And I already played.
I personally think 3 days max before someone defeats him. Maybe 4. But speaking of that Pinnacle Boss.
Possible.
This is how the devs are addressing what is there to do in the endgame after completing your monoliths. So they've added this new super tough boss called Aberoth, and I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be the most challenging thing in the game so far. We're probably going to see more Pinnacle bosses in the future, but for now, he is the Pinnacle. And you're going to have to earn your way to being able to tackle him by first defeating all 10 of his lieutenants, which are called Harbingers. Now, when you first finish the level 70 timeline, the first Harbinger will spawn right after you beat the boss. And the Harbingers have this mechanic where they take on some of the abilities of the timeline boss you just defeated. Thereafter, Harbingers will spawn in empowered timelines at higher corruption levels. So if you want to take on Aberoth, you're going to have to work your way through some pretty high-end content first. That'll keep you busy for a while. Now, these new bosses are
Well, obviously, to defeat the new Pinnacle boss, you need to do high-level content.
looking pretty cool, and I'm anticipating some interesting mechanics, partially because the devs are making a huge change just to the base core mechanics of the game by giving everyone an evade ability. We see this in a lot of modern RPGs. They've sort of progressed and evolved towards giving players some kind of dodge roll or evade button by...
You know what you need in these games? You need... Now, I do have a quirk and problem with the this evade thing, and it's the fact that it doesn't actually seem like a movement skill. Evades always need to be a movement skill in these games without exception. If you press that evade button, you be damn sure that it's actually a movement speed increase, than not just straight up running in a straight line. No exceptions. Literally never exceptions.
By default to give players greater mobility in combat. And Last Epoch was feeling a little dated by not including that, but just a couple months post-launch and they've already added it. So every class starting at level 1 has Evade, which has its own dedicated button. It has 2 charges on a short cooldown, and it could also
maybe on higher level it actually works, that it is a movement skill, but currently no.
modified by certain abilities, affixes, blessings, and even unique items. In fact, I think there's a unique item that'll replace your evade with the ability to summon a crab. Now, and you may be wondering, well, why would I want to get rid of my evade? I just spoke about how important it is to have that mobility. Well, the answer is the game already has mobility skills.
Yep.
So now it's more about
every class gets them, and they're honestly the goddamn same for every class. It's just the teleport blink ability.
you deciding, do you want to just rely on evade, which has its own dedicated button? You drop your mobility skill and therefore you can take on another like support skill or something. Or do you want to run with evade and a mobility skill for even more mobility? Or do you just want to rely on a mobility skill and swap out evade for crab? And not only is having this evade great for obvious reasons, you know, being able to not get hit by things is pretty nice, but maybe less obviously, the devs are giving us a hammer, right? So now they know, because we have a hammer, they can design challenges with nails in them. You know what I'm saying? Their boss designs will now reflect the fact that we have a mobility skill. Every build ought to...
Dude, Lost Ark is already moving past this. Lost Ark had these evade skills. It was also instantaneous get up button on a 20-second cooldown, which shared the button with the evade skill. But Lost Ark now is adding parry. That is the next step. Last Epoch already needs to start making boss designs with parry in mind. AKA, you need to press the button when you time it, when the boss attacks, so you don't get damaged. That is the next move.
have a mobility skill. So this means that they're able to make more interesting boss designs, and I suspect Aberoth is going to be quite a fight. Probably as Harbingers as well. Now, to help keep track of your progress through the Harbingers, the devs are adding a third faction called the Forgotten Knights. This faction unlocks right after you kill your first Harbinger, and as you progress through the faction, you'll unlock various bonuses and rewards. But this is a special faction. You don't have to leave your existing faction to join it, so you're still going to pick between Merchants Guild, which is the trade faction, or the Circle of Fortune, the non-trade faction, and then you're going to additionally become part of the Forgotten Knights. And speaking of those factions, by the way, their ranks will now go up to 12, and they've been rebalanced to have smooth...
By the way, there is so much potential with just the factions as an easy system to always keep track of what's happening. It's insane.
Their progression throughout. And it's also going to be easier to farm favor to rank up your factions in the earlier stages of the endgame. For Circle of Fortune players, we're getting new ways to farm boss-specific drops and experimental items. And for the Merchants Guild, improvements will be coming to the search functionality within the Bazaar later on in this patch. In fact, there's a whole lot of quality of life improvements coming with this patch in general. The game's loot filter, which is already amazing, probably the best loot filter in any RPG, it's being further improved. You can now filter items by
more or equal to this is so nice.
Legendary potential or by Weaver's Will, so you don't have to go...
I'm not gonna lie though, even though setting up your loot filter in this game is literally 10 minutes if you have never once done it in your life, because you need to actually look at all the affixes, look at all the things, understand what you actually want and whatnot. When you have done it before, setting up a loot filter is like the equivalent of 1 minute or 2 minutes, honestly, just. But I still want the ability to just import someone's loot filter and not even think about it. I really want that.
Go around now picking up or looking at every unique that drops. You can just filter out if it doesn't have any LP. Then for your endgame farming, they've added an ability to search the echo web and filter for specific rewards and echo types. So you don't have to go mousing over, clicking on everything, you can just filter it. Then the Gaze of Orobus is being reworked completely. Death is now less punishing. You're only going to lose one gaze instead of all of your gaze if you die. And there's no more diminishing returns on stacking them as well, because instead of consuming all of them, you're only going to consume 4 at a time, and the others are going to carry over. Altogether, this means that we're going to be able to increase corruption faster. So faster progress in that regard there in the end game. And this also applies to the catch-up mechanics they had already added to increase the corruption on your lower corruption timelines. Basically, if you found any aspect of that part of the end game tedious, things have been greatly improved since launch. My favorite change, though? Blessings. Previously, if you wanted to swap your blessings, you had to defeat a timeline boss all over again. Now,
annoying.
Every blessing you unlock is saved, and you can swap.
I cannot believe this was not a thing from the start of the game, if I'm being completely honest.
Between those blessings at any time for a gold cost. Not a big one either. And this also extends to alts, by the way. So blessings you farm on your main will also be unlocked across your other characters, but for those other characters, it's going to be at their lowest roll. Still, though, that is a huge boon for leveling up extra characters, which I'm very happy about. And that's not even the only change that is making things better for altaholics like me. They're adding something called a Glyph of Envy. This is a new crafting material that will modify an item unpredictably, which is bad. You don't really want to do this on an item you care about. But what it does is then add a bunch of stability to the timeline in which you just completed an echo. So you're basically sacrificing an item to get stability. What it really is a catch-up mechanic disguised as a crafting material. By playing on your main, you're eventually going to get a bunch of these crafting materials that aren't super useful to you. But then when you want to make a new character, well, then you just burn whatever random item drops you get, consume these glyphs, and blast your early monoliths to catch up as soon as possible. Now, outside of that, the devs have made a ton of balance changes. Ward builds were dominating the meta. They've reworked Ward so that builds that were stacking a ton of Ward are nerfed, but builds using a moderate amount of Ward are untouched or even slightly buffed. This is a great change to help achieve better build balance. Ward stacking was absurd. Then boss defenses have been changed. Previously, bosses had this dynamic damage reduction so that if you went into a boss fight with just an absurd amount of damage, the boss would dynamically suddenly gain a bunch of damage resistance so that you don't delete it in half a second. And there were always some grumblings about how exactly that system was handled and implemented. So now they're replacing it entirely with a new system. Bosses will have breakpoints in their health bar where they will suddenly gain a burst of ward to protect them. And that ward will decay over time naturally, or of course you can...
God, this is so annoying though when this happens. I got so confused because you see this already in the campaign. I got so confused when I first encountered the boss like this. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Huh? What?
You can also just DPS it down faster. It's altogether a much better system for keeping boss fights interesting without overly punishing high DPS players. Then channeled skills are now able to generate mana while channeling. Many
Oh, that is so big.
skills have been reworked, like Disintegrate, Shield Bash, and Avalanche being some that were particularly reworked. There's a bunch of itemization changes. And
I have never played a druid. I should probably make one at some point. After 5 more necromancers, I promise. Okay? And then after like at least 2 more sources. It's fine, boys, it's fine. Anyway, there are a lot of balance changes, but it's fine. Max Roll has all your stuff that you want to know if you want to just, blast at easy mode, because, a lot of stuff is still OP. I'm actually currently using Red Blood. I previously never used it. I just used Necrosis or whatever that skill is called. Anyway, this was Kuzer Said, that was Riker. Thanks for watching. Bye.